acknowledge the presence of college principals, SETA CEOs, SASCI Platinum members. We need to make sure that when we meet in 2026, we have doubled the number of Platinum members. Our Platinum members, we have Transnet, ETDP SETA, Mining Qualifications Authority SETA, Majuba TVET College, Ikhala TVET College, Siput CPUT, DUT, MUT, and UNISA. So currently we have 10 Platinum members. My challenge to you is let's make sure that when we meet in 2026, I would like to see SETA, P-SETA being one of the Platinum members as well. Also, let me acknowledge the conference partners, additional to the NSA. That is the West Coast College, the P-SETA team, led by the COO, and the Services SETA. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good morning to you all. I'm not too sure whether you have received the latest program. There were a few changes that had to be made to the program. So instead of ending at 3, I think we're probably going to end at around 5. So I thought I should just say. Okay. If you don't believe me, I'm going to take you through the program. Yeah, the light. It's too bright. All right, we'll start with reflections on day 1. It will be followed by plenary session number 7. That will be led by moderator is Prof. Reddy. Then we've got 2 speakers there, Prof. Carsten as well as Prof. Winberg. Then if you go to day 2, we'll have the parallel sessions, tea break and poster presentations. We'll receive feedback from the commissions, closing remarks, and then we'll depart at 1 o'clock. I just wanted to make sure that you're listening. Okay, so that is the program, colleagues. I know most of us will be rushing to the airport after 1 o'clock, so my commitment is that we will definitely be done by the program by 1 o'clock. I will just then take you through the reflections for day 1. We received an address from the principal of CPUT, and in the main, I think he just wanted us to leverage technology and find innovative ways to implement WIL. What stood out for me was the words that he used, that we need to bring in new solutions to implement WIL and infuse innovation. So we shouldn't go to the traditional way of implementing WIL. We just need to make sure that the WIL that will be done for the future, it's a WIL that will be attractive to the future generation. So we need to move away from the traditional ways of doing things. We received an address from the president, and I think she wanted us to make sure that we implement the resolutions. I know she even insisted that the delegates must receive a presentation on resolutions that were made in the 2022 conference, and we must not just say when they say, how was the conference? I quote her words, we mustn't say the conference was nice. But though I must admit, this venue is very nice. But she said we must not use the word nice. We must rather say it was informative, it was enlightening, and the solutions that we have are implementable. In other words, we'll be able to implement the solutions that we discussed in this conference. There were two, then I'm going to summarize information from plenary 1 and 2. Key there was Partnerships for Will. We received a presentation, and we must really acknowledge the work that ETDP CETA is doing, or it has done, when it comes to just the research, bringing together 10 TVET colleges and doing a research that aimed to enhance workplace learning and deepen our understanding of work-integrated learning practices. We are really looking forward, Prof. Nduna and the team, to you replicating the solutions then to other TVETs, because it's something that we need. And like I said, the solutions must be implementable. What we came up with are things that TVET colleges will be able to implement. And there was also a strong call for TVET institutions to take greater responsibility when it comes to WIL initiatives. We received a presentation from the 2 CETA CEOs. We have noted as CETAs the issue of stipends. It is a serious challenge when you're implementing programs, or sometimes you find that as CETAs, you implement in one department, one learner will be paid X amount and another learner will be paid X amount. So it's something that as CETAs we are working on, and just ensuring that the stipends are also competitive. He also spoke about the issue of accountability for both the host employers and the learners, and the importance of strengthening industry partnerships. MERCETA spoke about the journeyman model that they are doing of having mentors to support WIL learners and ensuring that we produce skilled professionals. It was followed by a plenary on the future of work. What came out for me is that the future of work is shaped by the interplay of time, dimension, location, digitalization, and infrastructure. And the presenters, they emphasized, again, innovation, adaptability, and just a human-centric approach or human-centric practices. They articulated the issue of digital tools to transform the job roles and the pace of digital change. There's a golden thread between what the VC of CPUT said in the morning. Emphasis is more on technology. Emphasis is more on digital transformation. So it is important for us to transform how we are implementing WIL program. The issue of training, reskilling, upskilling lecturers at the institutions to keep up with the technological advancements. It's something that is very, very key. We need to make sure that our lecturers are also capacitated, and Tshwane University of Technology spoke about the Future of Work Institute that has been established. In the main, they do research on future of work, including automation, digitalization, changes in workforce dynamics. And Mr. Mutlomi also spoke about they serve now as they serve as a link between graduates and also between the academics and the industry, which is a good model that can be replicated by other institutions. Then there was a plenary 4, was on quality standards for WIL. NSA presented their findings from their study on work-integrated learning. The study outlined policies, legislations, and the implications for WIL. One of the key findings that stood out was the issue of lack of coordination in the implementation of will, pointing out the absence of a lead organization to ensure effectiveness and accountability. So the importance of having a policy to assist or support the implementation of will. This policy will probably be driven by the department. We received a presentation from Dr. McRae, and also the CEO of QCTO, as well as the COO of PCETA, where they just emphasize the importance of establishing quality standards for will implementation. This is one of the findings that emanated also from the research that was done by the ETDP CETA team that is led by Professor Ndona, that we need to come up with quality standards or a quality framework for implementation of will. There was, then the last session was on graduate employability. We received a presentation from DDG of Economic and Tourism in the Western Cape. He emphasized the importance of a citizen-centric approach. Those who work in the public service, they'll know that we've got Batupili principles in the public service. We have constitutional values and principles in the public service. So what he was saying, it's just saying, let's just bring everything together. The focus should be on the citizens at the end of the day. And the importance of government creating an enabling environment for business or to supporting SMMEs. What was interesting from that presentation, not to say other presentations was not interesting, it was the approach that Western Cape has adopted of teaching employability skills at a school level. It's something that should really be infused into the curricula, especially at schools where learners are taught the entrepreneurial skills. We mustn't just be taught to say you complete and you should be able to draft a CV, but they should be able to develop a business plan. They should be able to start their own businesses in order for us to grow the local economies. Because if we go for this approach, we will be able then to grow the local economies. We received a presentation on the research that was done by World Bank. The importance of aligning curriculum with labor market needs was emphasized, and that the strategic shift should be on employability more than anything else. There's a point that I forgot to raise, is the issue of supporting SMMEs or identifying SMMEs as host employers when you implement will. It's a model that I've seen that the CUT is implementing. There's a program that PCETA funded. And CUT, what they did, they placed learners at the local SMMEs. We had learners who were supporting bakery owners, learners who were supporting local businesses. So it is a model, and we have seen the success from that implementation of the model. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to delay the discussions for today. If there's anything that you would like to add to these reflections, you are more than welcome to do that. Do we have comments, or are we good to proceed? All good. We are now going to move to plenary 7. Plenary 7 is chaired by, or the moderator is Professor Reddy. Professor Reddy is the Director for Community Engagement and Will at CPUT. The speakers, we have Prof. Carsten Zegwaard, as well as Prof. Winberg, but let me call Prof. Reddy to the stage. Thank you. Can we get chairs for the two speakers? We don't have chairs.
Okay, very good morning and welcome to our final day, day 3 of our, I think, very vibrant World Africa 2024 conference. I have to say Plenary 7 deals with world research, but we are not starting to talk about world research today on the final day, because day 1, as you know from the program, dealt primarily with world research workshops which were held and hosted by CPUT at the Hotel School at Granger Bay. And I must say the attendance and the vibrancy of interactions that occurred there was extremely heartwarming. So to take the discussion forward and following, like our program director has mentioned, the myriad of ideas that were shared yesterday by the various different organizations as well as universities. So many ideas, but I think it's only right for us, to try to put those ideas to the test. And what better way than trying to enhance our handling of world, or the enhancements of work integrated learning by enhancing the scholarship of work integrated learning. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our 2 globally renowned world researchers who I'd like to invite to the stage to take your seat, and that is Professor Carsten Zegwaard, all the way from New Zealand, and Professor Chris Winberg. Please come to the stage. As they come to the stage, I will just remind you of a few important aspects of their particular work in their space. Professor Zegwaard holds many hats, I do believe, but one of them, very importantly, is he's the director of world research, not the director of world like I am at CPUT, but world research in particular. And as such, he's really made great inroads. He's been a dynamic participant in the WACE research board as well for many, many years. And he hails from the University of Waikato in Hamilton, New Zealand, all the way from there. And I think when Dr. Nofumele and I met him last year in a world symposium in Johannesburg, we said almost instantly that we must make plans to get him through to our World Africa Conference, and I'm so happy that it has materialized. In particular, as well, one of the very important hats that he does hold is he is the editor of the International Journal of Work Integrated Learning. Professor Chris Winberg is very much at home. She is from CPUT. She used to be our past director for Fundani CHED, or the Center for Higher Education Development, and since many years now, I do believe it's her second term, as the NRF World Research Chair. You may remember that she is the one, she and her team, right back in the years of 2011, put through a CHE Good Practice World Guide, and I do believe that many of us still use that as a very important reference document when we look at our world practices. So without further ado, I would like to invite then our first speaker, and that is Professor Zegwaard. to the podium to share his thoughts on how we can enhance world research. Thank you.
Right, kia ora. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for everyone for being here as well. What I'm going to do this morning is to talk a little bit about the trends of research that are happening in the world literature, and at the end I've got a whole series of resources to share as well with you, which hopefully will help you with your practice. Some of the slides have a lot of material in them, but that's okay. The slides will be shared afterwards, and you'll be able to lift these resources out and then explore further if needs be. Ooh, that sounded dramatic. We've been very fortunate, as I referred to the work that Judine Pretty from the University of Waterloo and myself have been doing around the International Handbook for Work Integrated Learning, which allowed us to have a really good overview of what's happening in the research space and work integrated learning, and likewise with our involvement for the International Journal as well. But before we start talking about the trends that are occurring, we should talk about the term work integrated learning. Now, the term work integrated learning has been around for a little while, and when Judine and I were putting the handbook together, we thought, hey, we've got all this literature that we're working our way through. We should do a deep dive and see where the first discoverable mention of work integrated learning is in the literature. And we were able to find a citation in 1995, and the people here will be most interested in that, as that was the first discoverable mention that we could find of work integrated learning, and that was from a conference proceedings paper of a conference that was held here in South Africa. So right from the very beginning of the term work integrated learning, South Africa was right there already, which is really, really awesome. But the concept of the learner working and learning alongside a professional, that itself is not a new concept. The term may be, relatively speaking, new, but the concept isn't. You're all familiar with cooperative education. That's started by Herman Snyder at the University of Cincinnati. That was started in 1906. And Herman Snyder himself said he didn't necessarily invent the educational approach. He had borrowed that idea from the practices that were happening in law and in medicine around that time. Sandwich degrees, which is a UK model of work integrated learning, is a 4-year degree where the third year is fully in the workplace. That almost certainly started or been around since 1840. And we know that because there was legislation that came before Parliament at the time that made mention of the sandwich degrees. And the modern practice of apprenticeships, those origins can be traced back all the way through to Imperial Rome. And when you think about the whole idea of the learner learning alongside the master, I mean, that concept itself is as old as time. So even though work integrated learning as a term, as an umbrella term, is relatively new, the ideas that sit behind it, not necessarily. Now you'll see here a list of different models of work integrated learning. It's only a snapshot. There will be lots of other terms as well. And you can see there are lots of different terms used to describe various practices of work integrated learning, which is why it's been so important to have that umbrella term for work integrated learning, because that's created us that particular space of practice and space of research as well. It's quite useful to split work integrated learning broadly in 2 different types of models, and that is your placement model, so that's your full immersion in the workplace, that's really high impactive and for an extended period of time. And then you've got non-placement forms of work integrated learning, where the student still has contact with an external stakeholder and still doing authentic work with a meaningful purpose, but quite likely is based fully on campus or maybe a little bit of time spent in the workplace itself. Now, there is no single theory of learning for work integrated learning, and there won't be either. The theories of learning that are already established, and you see them here behind me, already underpin the practice of work integrated learning and the theoretical thinking that sits within. So we've got the cognitive development theory by Peugeot, social culturalism by Vygotsky, and then later additions by Wirtz and Engström. The early work from Vygotsky was in Russian, so it took a little while to come out into the Western world. Learning through experience, or we often call it learning through doing, by Dewey and Kolb. Reflective learning by Son and Gibbs, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Social learning theory by Bandura. I actually think Bandura's work is somewhat overlooked, but it's really underpinning for the practice of work integrated learning, so I do think we should spend more time looking at his work. Situated learning theory, which is probably by Levi Wenger, who are probably the most cited theorist in work integrated learning. And of late, the theory of human relatedness is coming through that might be some relevance for us as well. Now, when you look at these theories over here, you'll see two themes coming through. One is the theme of learning through doing, and the other being the theme of learning in a social context. And you can see how that relates to how we see learning occurring within work integrated learning. So let's talk a little bit about the research trends that are occurring in the WIL research space. First, we've seen a change in methodology in work integrated learning. Pre-2000, it was mostly cooperative education research. Much of the research was quantitative. And at the turn of the century, it kind of flopped over to the other way, where much of the research ended up being qualitative. But these days, a lot of the research is mixed methods. And I sincerely believe that mixed methods, that's the sweet spot that we want to be in, because that allows us to triangulate to different sets of data to have a better understanding of knowing what is occurring within that context. We've also seen a change in the research teams as well. So about 20 years ago, it was common to see papers published by a single author or maybe two authors. These days, it's much more common to see papers authored by 3, 4, or 5 authors. And these authors will be located at different institutions, but also across different countries as well. So we're seeing a lot more cross-collaboration occurring in the research space. Now, we all know employability is driving the expansion of work integrated learning, not just in South Africa or New Zealand, Australia, it's right across the globe. So I won't unpack that any further. But what I do want to identify is that often work integrated learning, the advantage of work integrated learning that's often cited is that students who do work integrated learning have a competitive advantage of those that do not do work integrated learning, and that they tend to be employed earlier and have earlier advancements in their career. However, we're increasingly moving towards all students doing work integrated learning. So that competitive advantage is actually going to become the norm, which is great for employability, but it does mean we need to also focus on the other benefits of work integrated learning, and it's not just about employability. It is important, but we shouldn't be too distracted by that either. Non-placement work integrated learning research around that has definitely been developing of late. Pre-COVID, there was a little bit of activity happening in that space. There was a bit of work done by Judy Kay, who's quite well known in the waste space. But when COVID came along, all of a sudden the access to the workplace became limited. Non-placement forms of work integrated learning expanded. And with that, there was research happening as well that we now see coming through as published literature in the work integrated learning literature. So there's definitely been an expanding in that area. Now, quality of work integrated learning, I would argue that all of the literature has been about the quality of work integrated learning, because all of it's been about better understanding or gaining better understanding or improving our practice. But there's been so much focus on quality of late that it really has come through as a theme by itself. Now, quality has come up among discussion with Saskia already a lot in the conference already, and I understand there's moves to make a quality framework that's South African based, which I think is a really good idea to do that. There are quite a few quality frameworks already published, so there's lots of good areas that you can borrow material from, and I've got some references there that I make available for you to look at that. But a lot of those quality frameworks are published in the context where it's practiced, and South Africa is its own unique context, so it's important to have a framework that reflects that. Well-being, as a society as well, we're much more focused on well-being now than we have before, which is good, because we really need to do that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. But we also know that students in higher education, they have additional challenges to their well-being. And students doing work integrated learning, or in particular those who are doing work placements, they have additional challenges again. And that's around the selection criteria, maybe they need to move, the whole idea of full immersion into a workplace, the responsibilities. There are definitely some challenges for students, and there's increasingly research happening in this area. Now, the International Journal for Work Integrated Learning is running a special issue on well-being. We're hoping to publish that at the start of next year, so we currently have got the special issue coming through the last stages of review, amendments, and copy editing is kind of where it sits at the moment. So I encourage you to keep an eye out when that special issue comes out, because there'll be some really good publications sitting within there. So for one big topic to another, equity, access, and inclusion is another big area of growth and research in work integrated learning. And we know there are some significant equity access or equitable access issues for higher education, and we've got that within work integrated learning as well. Now, some of those are fairly deep-seated issues, and they can't necessarily unpack them all, but the one I want to identify as being an obvious one is the whole